I used to work late shifts at a tech company in downtown Chicago. Most nights, I would just Uber home, but this one Friday, I decided to save money and take the train. It was the last Blue Line train, around 1:20 a.m. The car I boarded was nearly empty, just an old man in a trench coat at the far end. He didn't move or even look up. I sat down in the middle, opened my phone, and put in my earbuds. A few minutes in, I noticed something weird. The train wasn't stopping. We had passed 2 stations already, but it didn't slow down at all. I pulled out my earbuds and looked around. No announcements, no lights indicating the next stop. Just that hum of the train, and that man still sitting perfectly still. I went to the intercom to ask the conductor what was going on. No answer. I pressed it again. Nothing. I walked to the front car, only to find the driver's seat empty. The door was open. There was no one operating the train. When I turned around, the old man was now standing in the middle of the car, staring at me. He smiled and said, "You shouldn't have stayed on past midnight." Before I could respond, the train screeched violently, like metal on metal. But we weren't stopping. I grabbed a safety handle as the train shook like it was going off the tracks. Then, everything just stopped. Dead silence, no motion. I looked out the window and saw nothing. No tunnel, no station, just complete blackness. And when I looked back, the old man was gone. I pulled the emergency door, ran down the tracks in panic for what felt like hours. Eventually, a worker found me near the Darman station. Said no trains had run in that tunnel since midnight. The train I was on wasn't even scheduled after 12:15. Back in 2016, I was visiting my cousin in Philadelphia. One night, I stayed out too late and missed the last direct train. I ended up on a connecting route I'd never taken before, something called the Crescent Line. There were barely any people on the train. Just me, a woman with a baby, and a man in a faded hoodie. After a while, the train slowed down. But instead of stopping at normal station, it pulled into a dimly lit platform I'd never heard of. There were no signs, no announcements, just a crackling speaker that muttered, "Next stop, Obsidian." I stepped off the train in confusion. The woman with the baby stayed on. The man in the hoodie, gone. The platform was cold, covered in soot and dust. It felt abandoned. I walked toward what looked like an exit, but the door was welded shut. I turned around. The train I came on? It was gone. No noise, no lights. Just vanished into the tunnel. Suddenly, all the lights on the platform shut off. I was plunged into total darkness. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight. My heart was pounding. Then I noticed something on the wall. A massive, hand-painted sign. No exit, no return. Then I heard it. A loud, dragging sound. Metal on concrete. It echoed down the tunnel. I turned and saw a figure, slowly walking down the tracks toward me. It was wearing what looked like an old train conductor's uniform, but its face was wrong. Stretched, pale, and its eyes completely black. I ran back across the platform, slamming on doors, screaming for help. Then another train appeared, but this one had no windows, no passengers, no driver, just open doors. With nowhere else to go, I got on. The doors closed immediately. It took me back to a real station 3 stops away, but when I asked the worker there about Obsidian Station, she went pale and said, "That line was shut down in 1987. after 3 people disappeared from that platform. I never found out what that place really was, but sometimes, late at night, I hear a low announcement in my head. Next stop. Obsidian. Back in 2021, I had just moved to Seattle for work. I was still figuring out the train system, especially the late-night schedules. One rainy night after a long shift, I caught the last southbound train around 12:50 a.m. There were only a few people in the car. A couple near the front, and a man sitting across from me in a business suit. He didn't look unusual, except that he was just staring at me, not blinking, not smiling, just watching. I thought maybe he recognized me from work or something, so I gave a half smile and looked away. 10 minutes passed. Every time I glanced up, he was still staring. His head never moved. He hadn't even blinked. What made it worse was the window behind him. I could see my own reflection and the empty seats around me, but I noticed something strange. He wasn't in the reflection. He was sitting right in front of me, but in the glass, there was nothing there. I started to panic. I stood up and walked to the other side of the car, trying to calm myself. I looked back at him, still watching, still no blink, still no reflection. The train stopped at a small station. The doors opened. No one got off. No one got on. Except him. He suddenly stood, walked toward the doors, and right before stepping off, he turned to me and said, "You shouldn't ignore the things that aren't in the mirror." Then he stepped out and vanished into the fog outside. I sat there frozen until the train reached the next major stop. When I told a security officer what happened, he paused and asked, "Which car were you on?" I told him. His face went pale. "You must have been mistaken. That car was taken off service last week. There was a death." I didn't ask for details, but sometimes when I ride alone late at night, I still check the reflections in the window and pray that everything I see in front of me is also looking back. My legs were emptied after the security guard said this wagon was removed from service last week. I froze. "What does it mean?" I asked. The man missed his eyes. "Last week, a man threw herself on the rails in that wagon. Cameras showed that she was there, but nobody saw her on the train." My eyes shifted to the windows immediately. Reflections. That night, the man who looked at me on the train, actually, he might not be there, but I saw him. We came to the eye. In fact, he spoke to me. I couldn't get on the train after that day. Every time, I can't take my eyes from the windows. Always the same fear. I see someone, but there is no reflection. Last week, I had to ride the same line once again on the way home. I gathered my courage. I sat down, and 2 stops later, someone sat in front of me. Dark grey suit, flat black hair. He stared at me again. I immediately looked at the glass. Again, was not. I jumped up as a reflex. The man looked at me and whispered, "You see me now, but soon you'll join me." At that moment, the train darkened, brake, doors opened, but there was no station, just darkness. The man disappeared before he could understand what happened. I was alone. I don't remember how I got out of there that night, but since that day, I'm trying not to look at the mirrors and windows, because if he sees someone, but if there is no reflection, maybe he's not a ghost. Maybe he's here to replace you.